can't see anyone but Cam, so I'm just going to give Cam the full load.
I'll fix it.
You need. I'm giving you a lesson. All right, here we go.
I'll try to fix it for you.
Well, we thought this was going to be a wonderful idea to come live from Maui.
There you
y'all
go.
are.
Okay.
Little did we did not figure in the equation that there's a 4-hour difference. So it's 6 a.m. here in Maui, but we're dedicated. We're here, and if you ever need a set builder, Misty's your girl. She has built this setup. Anyway, all right. So good morning to everyone and greetings from Maui. It's beautiful here, and we were figuring out, my friend Cindy, who used to be my business partner, would come over here once or twice a year. We did it for years, and she's been to Maui 30 times. We figured out that I've been here 20 times, so it's like coming home when we come to Maui, and it's beautiful, and we stay in the same place every time. It's just kind of old home week here. So, I've been doing a series on eating disorders. Now, eating disorders and alcoholism, drug addiction, all of the substance abuse. I mean, I do not look good in this. I'm trying to get past myself because I just look like this little pinhead sitting over there. But anyway, I'm not vain. Do not think I'm vain, all right? So we are doing, like I said, doing this 4-part series on eating disorders. And there's many similarities to eating disorders and alcoholism and drug addiction, in particularly. And finally, we've been saying it since '85. When I went to treatment, I was treated by Dr. Judy Hollis, who came out of she was a pioneer in the drug alcohol field. And so she took the 12 steps, went to OA, and lost over 100 pounds, and she was working at Long Beach Hospital in California for drugs and alcohol, the Naval Hospital, and Betty Ford is the one who mentioned to her, she said, why couldn't you use what you do for me, for my alcoholism, on your food? So that's how the idea came about of seeing eating disorders as addictions. And we believe that it goes through the same addiction process as drugs and alcohol, because the process is, the addiction process is, it starts with a thought. It starts with the feeling. These are diseases of the feelings. And so it starts, it kind of goes in a circle like this. It starts here at the bottom with a feeling. We feel bad. We don't feel good. Something happens and we have a bad feeling. And so we get to thinking. We get up in our pea brain and get to thinking that I know what would help. The alcoholic reaches for a drink, the drug addict reaches for a pill or a shot. Eating disorder people reach for excess food or no food, or they will reach for food and overeat and then find a way to get rid of it. So it's basically the same thing. It is about finding something to ease the pain of living. And you don't have to have a lot of pain to have an addiction. Just a little bit will do. Now, what makes us different from normies, there's people that will eat their feelings away at times, and they will not have eating disorders. But those of us that hang in there, our brain is wired different than that of a normal person. Much like the alcoholic and a drug addict. You cannot make an alcoholic out of a non-alcoholic. You cannot. a non-alcoholic, if they don't have the brain chemistry, you can't make an alcoholic out of them. They may overdrink, they may get one DWI, they may have one consequence, and what a normal drinker says is, I'm not going to do that again because it causes me too much pain. What an alcoholic says is, why aren't those highway patrolmen out catching, real criminals instead of stopping me? So that's how eating disorder people are. We make excuses for ourselves, well, I worked hard, or the kids bought, or whatever. So what we're talking about today is the causes of eating disorders. And the causes of eating disorders is much like drugs and alcohol. There's a genetic factor in that family history of eating disorders and our mental health condition. You can be raised by parents that have some form of mental illness, and you can start, if you have the brain chemistry, when you start using food to cope with what's going on in the home, it works. Like for me, my mother was an alcoholic, prescription drug addict. I took care of her from age 8. And when I found food, I found me a parent. I found me something to ease the pain of living. Addictions work for folks like us until they don't. So that family history. And in you go back and you look at your family history and see if there's any obesity or anorexia or bulimia in your family history. Also, go back 3 generations and see if there's any alcoholism and drug addiction. We have people coming to us, very religious people, and they'll say, because we're in a town where there's 3 universities that are religious denominations, and they'll come in saying, well, there's never, any food issues. I come from a perfect family. There's no alcoholism. But invariably, in the history, when we start getting into the history, they'll remember, the stories about great-grandfather that, they would hide away because he had a drinking problem, and he might have been the preacher, who knows? But it's always a kept secret. And so when we get that information, and I've worked with very few people with eating disorders that didn't have some alcoholism or drug addiction in their family history, or compulsive overeating, and so this is kind of off the subject, but I had never seen that series of that 600-pound,
600-pound life.
600-pound life. Have any of y'all ever seen that? It's a TV deal. I'd never seen it till over here, and I'm fascinated with it. The man out of Houston does the bypass surgery on them, and they, come in weighing 600-700 pounds, and they have to do. He's a wise man, and he has the same philosophy that we do, which I am glad that he doesn't just do the surgery, just a blanket surgery. He's very tough on them in a gentle way. And they have to go on a meal plan and stay on a meal plan and lose a certain amount of weight before he'll ever do the surgery on them. And I'm just saying that taken to the extreme, this disease is a killer, whether you're overeating, undereating, or you eat and throw up. The bottom line, like I've said before, it's progressive, and it is fatal left untreated. And so I've just been fascinated watching those. I've watched a couple of them, and what he also does is really look at the psychological part, and that excites me because a lot of doctors who do the surgery, the bypass surgery, never look at the mental health side. They might give it a little bit of attention, but not much. They just do it to kind of fill in the blanks on the paperwork. And I'm not talking about it, but I am talking about it because this disease is much more than a physical disease. I spoke at a bariatric surgery conference in Nashville here quite a few years ago, and everyone there was in different stages of having had the surgery, and the different stages of weight loss. And in visiting with them, most of them, that wasn't their first rodeo. They had had multiple surgeries, and now they're doing different types of surgeries. So they can have, numerous surgeries, but until you change from that, we get sick from the inside out, and the treatment has got to be from the inside out. It cannot be just a diet. Diets don't work. We go on a diet to go off of it. What we stress at Shades is meal plans. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. We encourage people to plan your meals, write them out in those early days, know exactly what you're going to eat. If something happens and you don't eat that meal, call your sponsor and be accountable to someone, because it is a very dishonest disease. But when you're a compulsive overeater, the body doesn't lie. It's right there for everyone to see. Or if you're anorexic, it's there for all the world to see. So you can't get by with, now bulimic can get by for a while, and be within a normal weight range. But if you know what to look for in bulimia, you can look at someone and see those swelled up glands here. They look like chipmunks. Their hair will be falling out, their complexions. But so anyway, you can see the signs and symptoms. So genetic factors is a big deal. It runs in families. Number 2 is biological factor. There is a definite imbalance of the brain chemicals such as serotonin and dopamine and hormones, and that needs to be taken into consideration. This is a disease. You're not bad, awful, and wrong if you overeat or undereat. It is a disease, and it must be treated as a disease. And what it is, it's progressive. It's very progressive. And just having the surgery, all of that does. And I had it in 72. They go in and they'll do something to your insides to reroute the food, either stop it all, where you can't eat very much, or with mine, it went through me, whatever. And that's the physical part. What I wanted that surgeon to do when I had the surgery is to cut out of my brain that compulsion to eat, that mental obsession. No human power can do that. That is where the spiritual part, and everything is really spiritual, but that's where the spiritual comes in. God can and will remove that from our brain if we'll let him. Now, I want him to zap me well. I want him to zap me thin is what I want him to do. Just zap me thin. It doesn't work like that. I had to do the footwork. He blesses the effort. We have to do the footwork if we're going to recover. And then we enlist the aid of a power greater than ourselves, and he guides us, or she, whatever your God concept is. So that imbalanced brain chemicals, not everyone has that. Those of us who have addictions and eating disorders, we have it. That's what sets us apart. That's why just losing weight is not the only problem. There is that psychological factor, and what happens there with the psychological side, what shows up is lots of perfectionism, particularly with your anorexics. A lot of perfectionism, and it creeps over with the other, with compulsive overeating and bulimia too, but it's a real primary with anorexics, that perfectionism. And then very low self-esteem. I've never worked with an eating disorder person yet, they may appear to have all kinds of self-esteem and feel good about themselves, but when you get right down into the heart, to the core, that is a cover up for that low self-esteem. Because when you're morbidly obese, this is where your overweight people try to be funny, or they're good storytellers, or they are good at their job, or they can be good volunteer people. They do things out here hoping you won't notice this 300-pound body. So there's psychological factors in that low self-esteem. You find a lot of anxiety and depression with eating disorder people, and then OCD, obsessive compulsive, and then that will bleed over into other things, into our behavior other than the food, but it's definitely in the food. And then all of this has a tendency to leak over into the eating disorder. And number 4 is the environment and culture. We live in a part of West Texas, or we live in, Texas. Over here, there's the native Hawaiians over here, and so you look at the culture that you were raised in. Hispanic people historically love to eat. And they are good cooks, and they have wonderful food, and they have wonderful celebrations. There may be 100 people at a little 2-year-old kid's birthday parties. They all bring food. They really celebrate, and they celebrate with food. You look at your African Americans, lots of celebration with food. And food is almost a ritual, particularly with the mother. If you don't eat the mama's food, you're mad at her. So when you go inside an African American family's home, where particularly if the mother or grandmother, if they're overweight, they want you, they show love by overfeeding. That's what I did. I fed everybody that came along. I cooked and I fed. So the culture can have an influence on the social pressure of, and then like Thanksgiving, you go home Thanksgiving, maybe you have, had a year of being in good recovery, going to OA, losing a lot of weight. You go home for Thanksgiving, and the first thing people want you to do is eat. And they take offense if you're not eating, that certain pie that they baked or whatever. So, environment counts a lot. And then social pressure. And I remember, because I had young kids, young girls, and young teenagers in the late 60s and early 70s. And along came Twiggy. Do y'all remember Twiggy? From England. She was a model, and she was that big around. And the girls loved it. And I don't think boys ever liked that, but the girls, not every girl, but that's really when the upstart of anorexia got really started, was in the Twiggy years. And then she was a model, and then every model from that point had to be that thin. Every model you saw, there wasn't a normal weight woman's body ever used to model clothes. They were stick thin, they were this thin. And so women of a normal size, normal weight, would think they were overweight looking at Twiggy. Particularly your teenagers. This is when eating disorders the ball really started rolling, particularly with your anorexia, and then followed by bulimia. And then, of course, we've had compulsive overeating around forever. But body, standards changed, and that was an unrealistic body weight. the way Twiggy looked. I mean, she looked like she came out of a concentration camp. We have treated people like that, coming in weighing 48 pounds, and I remember 168 pounds, and 70. If we got a 70-pound anorexic, we got kind of a heavyweight. I mean, we treated some very, very unhealthy people in those early days, and we don't see as much anymore. But you talk about anorexia is about perfectionism, and it usually starts in early childhood with, I hate to say it, mothers expecting too much out of daughters. We jokingly say around here, if it's not one thing, it's your mother. That's that conflict that girls get in with their mothers. And then those that don't have a relationship with their father, or maybe they have not had a father figure in their life, what girls get is that father hunger, that longing for a father figure. And food will fill that bill for a while until it doesn't. But they have that longing in their heart for that father figure. And so during that time of Twiggy, that's when kids started dieting in a way that we've never seen it before or since. And that the media portrayed, and the media has a lot to do with eating disorders. The media started portraying thinness. Thinness is the way to live. Thin. If you're thin, you're good. If you're not thin, you're bad. I mean, that was kind of the message. So get thin, and then number 5 is trauma and life stresses. It shades what, and we're not the only treatment center that does this, but we really do focus on that core pain. We really, do you know where my water is? We really do.
On the ground, on your left.
We really do focus on the core pain. And then, just a minute. That's what I admired about that doctor last night. He mentioned the core pain. And he said that he could do the surgery on these 600-pounders, but until they got to the core of it and had some good therapy on the, going in or before they did the surgery, it wouldn't work. And he is so right, but you don't hear many doctors talking like that it's a twofold illness, the physical aspect and the mental and emotional side. So it very much has that. So, like I said, we treat trauma, and I will tell you, a lot of people discount or downplay their trauma. A day in the life of a child is much different than a day in the life of an adult. Children have little sensitive hearts. And if they are already a sensitive child, one comment can go to the heart of that child. And what that comment does, that child will begin to make up that there's something wrong with them. And they'll begin to carry that. Now, the world may not know that. They may not talk about it, but it will start showing up. It'll start showing up in school. It'll start showing up and getting along with others. It'll start showing up at home. And, the kind of trauma, that's why I don't want to discount people's trauma. They will come in for trauma. There's something, they don't know what, but there's something happened in their childhood. And it could be a school teacher that, coaches, youth directors at churches, choir directors, ministers, anyone that has access to a child. It's not just parents. Anyone that has access to a child can do harm to a child, particularly if those children have sensitive little hearts. They begin to carry that. They take it on and literally carry it. And then if they're born into a family where there's conflict, where the parents are not real healthy, maybe they're divorced or getting a divorce or should be divorced, where there's conflict inside the family, those children will begin to pick up the parents' unresolved conflict and carrying that. They carry other people's pain and conflict. And so that's the trauma that is brought in, to any treatment center. But what, I've gone and done lots of training in trauma that other counselors have. We have done everything we know to do in how to treat people with trauma. Because with your eating disorder people, that's going to be the core. And like I said, it doesn't have to be anything great big. It can be an incident, one incident that will go inside that child's heart, and they carry it the rest of their life until they go to treatment for alcoholism, drug addiction, or eating disorders. Because what that does, it tells them up in their brain. I call it that feeling of no damn goodness. They just feel like they're not worth anything. Now, these may be your kids that excel in school. They could be your straight A students. They could appear to be popular, or they could be the other way. It's not, it's not just your kids that are not real successful in school. Some of your most successful in school have some of the most broken hearts. So in all of this trying to fit in is that overcompensating, and sometimes all they have is their eating disorder, and they will they guard it with their life, their eating disorder. That's what they can claim that is theirs. Mama can't take it away. Dad can't take it away. Nobody can take it away. And we carry that until we get, we carry other people's feelings into our adult life. And this is what we use over, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or eating disorders. But anyway, trauma in major life transitions, children are vulnerable, and what an adult can go through, and a lot of times they don't talk about it, but what an adult can go through can bother a child. I've told this story before, but it bears to be told again, because this is why you have to pay close attention to what's going on in your children's lives, because what bothers a child would not bother an adult. So I've told this story before about this family. The father was a fireman. They were a good family. Church goers, volunteered out in the community. They had a small ranch-style house, 3-bedroom. They had 3 kids, 2 daughters, an older daughter that was a teenager, and then a younger daughter that was 7 or 8, 9, 10 years old. And then they had a little boy. Had 3 bedrooms, so the girls shared a bedroom together. And this little girl idolized her big sister. And her big sister was popular, and she was a cheerleader, and she had friends over. And her sister, bless her heart, would include her little sister. She was like a part of the gang, and they'd have sleepovers and let her hang out with them, a beautiful picture. We treated this family like 38 years ago. They were one of the first that we ever treated. So this father had an aunt, a wealthy aunt. He had no idea. She had no children, but when she passed away, she left her lump sum of her, she was very wealthy, left it to him. And the first thing they wanted to do was to build a bigger home. They were cramped in that small 3-bedroom little ranch-style house. So they got excited about it. It was all going to be fun and games, and they talked about building the house. And it was a big 2-story house, and on one end, because they inherited a lot of money, on one end of the upstairs was the teenage daughter's bedroom, and on the other end was the little girl's. They were separated for the first time in their lives, not sharing a bedroom. And the little girl, the only voice that she had, she couldn't say, I hate this house. She couldn't say, I want to be in my sister's room. She didn't have the voice to say that. What she started doing is she stopped eating. She stopped eating, and it turned to anorexia, and that's how we got them. And so we got to the core of that. And this is a family that, there was no abuse. There was no abuse. But this is where you have to watch with your children, or it's that day in the life of a child is different. That went to that little girl's heart, and she felt separated and alone from not only her sister, but her sister's friends. So that's just an example of how life stressors are. Even good stuff can create trauma in a child's life. Major life transitions, the loss of a loved one, a death, a divorce. Divorces are, and there's a lot of them, and people can go through them in different ways. And, if you can, the main thing is what I tell people, if they're thinking about getting a divorce, one thing I tell them, if you're thinking about getting married, or you're thinking about getting divorced, or if you are having problems in your marriage, come here or go somewhere and do imago therapy. Before you get the divorce, do imago therapy. Because if you can't get along with that person, what you're going to do, if you leave that person and get out of that marriage, you're going to go recreate the same thing unless you change on the inside. We go to what's familiar. And so I recommend that people, like I said, if they're engaged, if they're about to get a divorce, whatever, look at that coupleship, because if you don't see what brought you together in the first place, you'll go find someone else to fill that vacant building in your heart. Okay, so divorce can trigger eating disordered eating habits, behavior. We see it all the time. And then there's a risk factor about, the risk factor is age, and the eating disorders, early eating disorders, particularly anorexia, happens young. Now, I've treated a 70-year-old anorexic. This is a disease. Sometimes it won't let you live, but it won't let you die. So we think of anorexia as being just like for young people. It's not. People can hold on till hell freezes over, barely feeding themselves. I had a woman that started out, it's amazing, just before I lived in Buffalo Gap, and her husband are both passed away now. But I did an intervention in Buffalo Gap. Now, the house where I did the intervention is where my grandson lives. But the daughter, I was at the Serenity House working, and her daughter was a social worker, and she came there, had a client and all, and we got to talking. And I was already treating eating disorders there in the alcohol drug unit. So we did an intervention on that woman, and she weighed maybe 70 pounds. And but she was alcoholic. We did the intervention because of alcoholism, and we contributed her weight loss to her alcohol and drug. Not drugs, but straight alcoholism. So she went to the Serenity House. We did the intervention. I transported her to the Serenity House, got her there, and she wouldn't eat. And then I realized we were dealing with more than just the alcoholism. Long story short, that woman later came to Shades. She would eat that meal plan. She never gained an ounce. I still don't know what she did with that food. But this is a disease that sometimes won't let you live, but it won't let you die. She lived to be probably 75, but she didn't do much living. She breathed in and out and would never, ever treat the anorexia. It was like a proud shield that she wore, that she was not about to gain an ounce. So the younger that we can get to people with eating disorders or any addiction, but the younger the better, because it becomes such a way of life. You know, whether you're a compulsive overeater or a binge eater, and a purger or an anorexic, it becomes a way of life. And so the younger the better. And that's why I like to talk with people, particularly people who have parents who have children. By the way, we don't talk enough about how boys, young men have eating disorders. Just not as much. But they are not. It's not just a female disease, and that's why when you get a male in treatment, they're pretty chronic. They're pretty ill because they think that they have a disease that just women have, and there's a lot of shame around with men with eating disorders, and they stay out too long, way too long, before they will seek treatment. And usually the way they seek treatment is they wind up in the hospital, malnutrition or dehydration. And so it's not just a women's disease. And so it is gender in that, it's not gender specific. It can affect any of us, okay, or anyone. Alrighty, so then there is the dieting and restrictive eating. Frequent dieting, weight, whether you go up and down, and extreme food rules can lead to unhealthy behavior. People can get into so many rituals with food, and that's how they keep their life in order, is with the food. Now, I'm talking here a lot about your anorexics, but then we've treated compulsive overeaters, and I got into a lot of that when I came out of treatment. I did modify the food plan that I was in treatment because it wasn't enough food, and so I went on the OA meal plan. And I stayed on that meal plan religiously for 18 years. I did not go off of that. I made myself miserable. I made my family miserable. I made everybody around me miserable because, we'd be on vacation, and my husband finally just gave it up. Food, he ate food to keep his body, just like you put gas in a car. He ate to keep his body going. But we'd be on vacation, and he wouldn't no more pick a restaurant. He'd pull up, will you go check it out before I get out? Because he knew if I got in there and they didn't have what I needed on that menu, and I've sometimes would, ask to talk to the chef or the cook, I've embarrassed the hell out of my kids, that I had to stay. That meal plan became my salvation. Now, it's not all that bad. I had never had my food in order, and I had such a fear of it getting out of order that I became very rigid. Now, today, I will tell you, if you do the work around the eating disorder, food is but a symptom. The food is not the problem, folks. It's that core pain underneath that we've got to work on. And mine was lots of childhood abuse. And I believe, and that, I would lose 100, 120, 140 pounds in a year and gain it back, usually within that same year. Because when I would lose the weight, all of that childhood pain and shame would come up, and I couldn't stand myself. I was psychotic at times. I wound up in a Misty's laughing because I think she thinks I am sometimes anyway. But I wound up in the, I was a pink lady at the hospital. I was a volunteer, and there was a ward up there on the 8th floor. And we used to joke about, and it was not a joking matter, but when we were delivering books or anything, we couldn't go on that ward because that was the mental ward. That was the crazy ward. Well, I wound up there one day. I had a complete breakdown, and it was about a lot about the food and about how I had got the food so narrowed down that was just all of my focus. I wasn't anorexic, but I could have been. But I made such a ritual out of the food. And I would wear waitresses out. I mean, I had to have this, and I had to have that, and this, anyway. I had to do what I had to do. But by the grace of God, the food has taken its proper place. And I promise you, if you are early in the program, if you will work the 12 steps with a sponsor, stay on a sensible meal plan, one day you're going to wake up, and there's some folks on here that I believe live like that. You're going to wake up, and the food will have taken its proper place. What I'm saying about that is I no longer binge. I eat because I'm hungry. That's the only reason that any of us need to eat. That was the last reason I ate. I never allowed myself to get hungry before. I never felt hungry because I took in massive amounts of food, massive. If I'd been an alcoholic, that would equal to being drunk all the time. I was drunk on food until it quit working. And I do not believe I would have wound up in treatment if it kept working, but it quit working for me. So, the only thing I wanted in my entire human life was to be thin. That is not the best golden life. But anyway, I promise you, if you'll stay on a meal plan, a sensible meal plan, work the 12 steps, go to Overeaters Anonymous, get a sponsor, and work it like your life depends on it, because it does, you too will get well, and the food will take its proper place. I can pretty much eat anything I want to eat today, but I'm particular about what I eat. I don't just put a lot of junk in my body. I don't. But food has taken its proper place. Food is, like on Nemo years ago, food is fuel. So no. All right. So another thing is that we look at is that people that make their living as athletes, dancers, often face pressure to maintain a certain body size. Your wrestlers in high school, college, oh my Lord, they have they want them at the very top of their division. And a lot of your people that we have treated that have come to us for bulimia that are wrestlers have reported that they'll have a bucket next to the scales, and sometimes they will have them throw up to lose an ounce or two so they can meet that weight check. Anytime that you have to meet weight checks, what it is setting people up to have eating disorders. So there's co-occurring. What we're talking about is the what causes the effects of eating disorders. What you can see is co-occurring mental issues. We see this a lot with eating disorder people. I've already mentioned that. Anxiety, depression, OCD, so can coexist with an eating disorder. Now, you can go to a psychiatrist. you can go to mental health. We've got one in Abilene, and it's good for, mental health. It's a psychiatric hospital. They do not touch the eating disorder. Most of your psych hospitals do not treat eating disorders. What psych hospitals do, they get you mentally stable. And so some psych hospitals, I guess, treat eating if they have that separate program, but it is a separate program because it's people with eating disorders. We're not insane. We just do insane things. We're just a bubble off a plum sometimes. Okay, so family, I've already talked about this, but family and social dynamics, this can bring up eating disorders quicker than anything, and that is family conflict, a lot of peer pressure, critical. If you're raised in a critical environment, that can create we have eating disorders because of the brain chemistry, but then these are things that can lead to eating disorders. Alrighty, so I've talked about what the eating disorders are, and there's a whole list of them that we haven't even addressed. But anyway, the main ones are anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and obesity. And morbid obesity is when you take it to the nth degree, and we consider morbid obesity as at least 100 pounds overweight. Okay, so signs and symptoms. I've already gone over a lot of this. All right, I don't want to, the body doesn't lie. That's the number one sign and symptom. If you're anorexic, it shows. If you're a compulsive overeater and you're overweight, it shows. The body doesn't lie. If you're bulimic, you can get by with it until you can't. After a while, you'll begin to put on weight. And there is the fatigue, there is dizziness that comes with eating disorders, fainting, a lot of stomach problems, issues, and so it's not a pretty disease to have. And with your anorexics, what happens is they begin to lose their weight. They also lose their hair. They have dry skin, brittle nails, their cold sensitivity, their irregular or missing menstrual cycle, swollen cheeks and jaw lines. This is for your bulimics. You can tell a bulimic, can't tell them much, but you can tell a bulimic with a purging bulimic with the jaw lines, and I've already mentioned that. A lot of dental problems, enamel erosion, cavities, and this can happen with your compulsive overeaters. It doesn't just happen with the bulimics. A lot of your compulsive overeaters that are, severely overweight can have these medical problems, because what happens with a lot of your obese people, they quit taking care of themselves. They quit going to doctors, they quit going to dentists because they have so much shame. A lot of times they can't even fit into the dentist chairs, a regular dentist chair, and so they quit taking care of themselves. Part of my work, and I would encourage each of you, if you do have an eating disorder, when you go to the dentist or the doctor, explain it to them, educate doctors and dentists, because unless they've been there, they don't know. They don't know about eating disorders. They get maybe 8 hours in school, but educate the professionals on your disease, because you just might help save someone's life. So that's what I have for today on signs and symptoms and the causes of eating disorders. We have a few minutes. Any of you have any questions or comments, I mean, I get started and I just talk, da, 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 run. It is, I will tell you, it is a deadly disease. But the good news is we can recover. We absolutely can recover. And you don't have to do it the rest of your life. Don't think about what you're going to do 6 months or a year from now. All we have is today. Any of us can recover just for today. This is all we have to do. So what I mentioned, the formula, and this is coming from me, and any other professionals will probably, a lot of people who work with eating disorders do not refer people to OA. I would not be here today. I would not be alive today. I would not have, surrendered about 150 pounds and kept it off since 72 had it not been for Overeaters Anonymous. I would not have stopped the bulimia had it not been for treatment and Overeaters Anonymous. So next week we are going to talk about treatment. How do you treat eating disorders? That we'll finish up by what the long-term overall picture is going to look like. But I will tell you now, if you have an eating disorder, I just gone to preach it. Go to Overeaters Anonymous. And sometimes since the pandemic, it's been hard. It's hard to find face-to-face meetings. You're doing a Zoom meeting now. Zoom meetings are all over the world. OA meetings. You go to oa.org, and you can get a list of meetings. 2 miles long. Do a meeting every single solitary day. Find you a sponsor on those meetings. Find you a sponsor, or maybe sometimes if you get around eating disorder people and you look like you need a sponsor, they might just come along and volunteer, but don't count on that. Get around recovering people. Find somebody that has what you want and ask them to sponsor you. And I will tell you, you will help them more than they will help you. That's how we recover, is one suffering person reaching out to another one. And so don't deny people in OA the right to recover. Ask them to help you, because you're gonna be helping them as well. Get on a food plan, and a food plan is, and I'm going to say this, and I'm sure Cam's talked about it. We're starting some new online courses, and we're going to have one. Misty's going to have her own food, and it is our meal plan is one of the best that I've ever seen. It's not a diet; it's a meal plan. So worth the steps, but I've been around OA for a long time, and there will be people, and I say keep coming, but there'll be people at OA meetings that maybe have been there 30 years and have never lost an ounce, but they've worked the steps. Now, what I call, and maybe it's a judgment call on my part, it's like fat serenity. And it would be just like an alcoholic. I mean, this is how serious these eating disorders are. It would be like an alcoholic going through the steps while drinking. There's no difference. No difference. You cannot do the deep core work that you need to do while eating. And I mean, you can go through the steps in your head and do all the work and the writing and all, but it's a twofold disease. And if you don't treat the physical part, that's what's going to kill you, is the physical part. Now, the mental and emotional side might kill you, because there is a high rate of suicide ideology among people with eating disorders. I'm a prime example of it. I thought, well, I'll eat this tonight because I'm going to kill myself tomorrow. I was always kind of putting off killing myself so I could eat what I wanted to eat then. I mean, this is a disease that is physical, mental, and emotional. And the only solution that I know, folks, is spiritual through the 12 steps. All righty, any questions or comments? It's good to see Michelle. How are you